Slavery by consent. The boy, as a child, is born as a pure spirit, unblemished by anything. Then, slowly but surely, the external influences of life begin to chip away at him, beginning with the parents, if the parents are damaged by societal influences. Let's face it, there are hardly any young adults who've escaped the persistent indoctrination which everybody is subjected to. It takes a well-read, experienced mind to sift through the nonsense and develop a personality which creates, indeed reverts back to, the true self. A well-rounded personality which is healthy, genuine, honest and wise. The television plays a large role in this negative control process, which is often used as a tool of convenience to pacify the boy, bombarding him with images and messages which are unnecessary and harmful. If the parents are reasonable to begin with, the television set is the first place that true slavery begins. It's the conveniently unpaid babysitter, the sneaky childminder you invited into the home. Television really has no interest in anybody's well-being. Obviously, there are certain topics of potential interest there for the boy, which are reasonably balanced and ought to be encouraged. However, can the parents truly know the content of this program before the parent and subsequently the child actually views this material? Imagine for one moment that the boy is left alone to either passively watch the show his parents set up for him, or the random, semi-interactive channel changing which is possible by himself. The moral fibre of programming has drastically changed over the decades, to not only reflect the current societal norms, but more often than not these days, the type of programming which pushes the boundaries in a perverse, unhealthy and insidious way. The controllers know that people are attracted to anything which is deemed as naughty. These contents are carefully created. It's programming by design. Nothing is by chance. No moment is passed by, other than the slight momentary lapse of reason by the nefarious intent of the creators. It is therefore part of the design to offer material knowingly deemed as naughty by those dirty minds with their inherent manipulation skills to keep him watching, listening and downloading his updates like a computer. Considering the boy's direction is one of manhood, it is in the intents of the controllers of the establishment to allow, even encourage the corruption, leading up to the destruction of the true self. The grown man of certain breeding stock is the enemy of the state. He's under attack, because what the establishment requires is slavery by consent. The modern man's shackles and chains are invisible. The chain links and the lock are provided by what is commonly known as society, and ultimately the self. An amalgam of characters, opinions and behaviours which are all viewed as socially acceptable and the done thing by those deemed as the normal and thus encouraged. Luckily for man, the key to the shackles which bind him is already in his possession, if he cares to search for it. He's a man, capable of breaking these imaginary bindings if he uses his mind properly. When the boy develops his own opinions based on logic and reason, which conflicts with the societal norms, he's punished in a variety of means. We've all seen it and experienced it. Being outspoken, affecting others who are asleep, can be like throwing a brick at the hornet's nest. Peer pressure is most often used. It's the most efficient. The group mentality which punishes the rebel can give rise to ostracism if his message cannot be fully comprehended, as usually new ideas can be viewed as a threat to what is often perceived as the common good. When peer pressure fails, it is quite possible, and even likely, he will eventually become criminalized. Luckily, we are not all total slaves at present, so it is still possible for decent individuals to form groups, accepting nuances and the finer points of this man, learning from him, teaching him, and accepting him. The core factors in the creation of a balanced man is to encourage his virtues, true virtues. We have seen the word virtue being misappropriated recently by people who are destructive, ill-informed, biased, and inexperienced. People who are often unaware of the fact that they are being used as useful idiots, as pawns in a game, to continue their own slavery by consent. Because not only do they enslave themselves, they attempt to enslave others, either knowingly or otherwise. The ignorant can be excused to an extent, as they are largely unaware of their misgivings, but the knowing, they are nasty. The art of controlling people is ancient. To understand ancient systems of society is to be aware of the mechanisms used against us today. The Tavistock Institute of Medical Psychology was created in 1947, funded by the Rockefeller Foundation, and is famous for using torture, experimentation with drugs and surgery, and all manner of hideous crimes against humanity, using tenets of known, provable methods of control, and to create, then hone, new methods. Methods such as creating family units in a controlled environment, so they are totally unaware of anything outside that environment. Sigmund Freud was the founding father of Tavistock methodology, and ought to be respected for his findings, which we can learn from. The fact that he engaged in barbaric and inhumane practices says more about him than anybody else. A man capable of such bizarre practices is worthy of study, which possibly, ironically, confirms any results from experiments which he was involved with. One such interesting experiment was to teach children that gold and silver were worthless and that plastic was of value. A child was eventually asked whilst playing a game, "Why do you want to be the daddy?" And the answer was thus: "When you're the daddy, you get the best plastic." This enclosed family unit experiment was barbaric, inhumane, but is in no way different from the controlled environment which we are all forced to live in, known as society. This goes to show that often people held in esteem by society are nothing but mind perverts, deviants, and destructive, irrespective of how interesting their theories and results of experiments are. Many men turn to alcohol, drugs, or others of destructive escapism by their own volition, as they have not developed the knowledge, wisdom, or understanding to comprehend how truly to make good his escape. Many men have been beaten down for decades and simply do not have the answers, energy, or the willpower left. An unhealthy situation is natural for an aware man's true self to desire escaping from, for the betterment of himself and others. If not, they will eventually become nothing but slaves by consent. Have you ever seen how people will happily walk past a man who is homeless? A man who is quite possibly the kind of character who can provide a wealth of insight and knowledge about these situations. A man who could possibly provide very useful information which could prevent others from suffering most of the societal engineering which preys on us all. You, your parents, your children, and everybody else. He's more than likely the type of man who's talented in many ways. The fact he's cold, hungry, or wears dirty clothing should naturally appeal to people for assistance. So why don't they assist? A simple conversation could save his life and give hope that there are people out there with humanity. Many of these men have been used as disposable utilities. They've been paid workers, warriors, husbands, good friends to people. They've owned vehicles, property, worked hard and enjoyed the benefits of normal life. Serving your masters of ostracization, the masters of the disposable, possibly lining yourself up for the same fate once you've served your purpose, on the whims of those with some type of power over you. If you walk past these down and out men without assisting, then you're obviously slaves by consent. Those 2.4 children and the lifestyle which is imposed upon you by Hollywood, the newspapers and magazines, by the average guy in the street, can easily be taken from you at the whim of an unhappy woman. A woman who desires a larger house, a flashier car, a more muscular man, or whatever is required by the latest culture download. Culture is given to you by your masters. It is a myth to believe that culture is created. Any movement or philosophy which is put into place by the people, threatening the status quo, will be subverted, with the ultimate aim of destruction. The power of wealth and the wealth of power are the motives for the man-farmers. The common man's welfare is secondary, if even counted at all. Men today are only useful until their work is done. So shut up, go to work, pay your taxes, then die. Taxation takes on many forms. Women appear to enjoy taxing men, psychologically, emotionally, spiritually, as well as financially. Flashy clothing, credit card bills for useless junk, champagne lifestyles, holidays, automotive expenditures, using their sexuality and manipulation skill in order to do so. Their sexuality is the desire of the simp, or the culturally influenced fool, who desires that the sexy woman is to be seen with him. The sexy woman who is actually the ugliest demon dwelling inside, that the woman society has deemed to be of value. Man is eventually taxed of his dignity, honour and respect. This is how men are mostly enslaved these days, by their desires for women and all the trouble it brings. Young men are programmed to desire procreation. The frontal lobe is not powerful enough to override the testosterone drive amongst the other many natural chemicals which are released, mixed with the incessant images and messages which society imposes upon them. It is natural for the desire to mate with women. This is why it is important that good men spend time with each other and with their sons to teach them the real values of life, the benefits and the pitfalls, so the chain of good intent is not broken for later generations. This is why MGTOW, men going their own way, exists. What we find today are an abundance of women who remove the children from their fathers, often utilising violence of the state as a means of doing so. It is as though the state has a monopoly on violence, handed down to the woman to decide when to call in their ruthless mafia thugs to do her dirty work on their behalf. The father has little influence in the education of the child thereafter. The children are left to the whims of their mothers, the school, television, and so-called culture which is given to them. It creates an environment where worthwhile knowledge and wisdom is destroyed by design, encouraging, fostering, and creating the next generation of slaves. The state has now decided to take on the role of father and offers nothing but bad parenting to serve the desires of the state itself. It has no benevolent, caring motivations whatsoever. It seeks only to punish men. It only serves to punish men. This is the importance of strong-minded men joining together, exchanging ideas, helping each other out, supporting and encouraging other men to become stronger, to repair, innovate, create, to assist his fellow man in developing his own skills and ideas. Critical thinking and independent thought are valuable tools in any man's toolbox. All which is required to participate is the common decency not to abuse and manipulate such kind and thoughtful men, and the desire to learn and to improve things as a whole. We should all strive to destroy this junk culture, however, though not by destructive means, but by setting tangible examples for others to follow, in positivity, in logical, ethical ways which nobody can deny is far more positive and useful. Great men have the capacity to change the world. It is an undeniable fact. Surely any rational man is interested in the free exchange of ideas, instead of the imposition of doctrines which undermine us. It is a duty of men who are awakened and aware to tell all his friends, then willingly walk away from the plantation. Anything else is slavery by consent. Things are moving up a notch recently, and the world is watching. It is time for men to take a firm but fair counter-strike. Thank you for listening, and hopefully you can take something of value from these opinions. I look forward to hearing your opinions and reading your comments. People will be interested in hearing your theories and your experience. Enjoy your day, MGTOW.